Hey everyone, and good morning. And today we're going to be talking about the Uturn Orbit turntable. It is important to note that this is the Generation 1. You can tell that because it's got a bare metal tone arm versus the black colored tone arm. It is the Gen 1. I've had this for a bit of time and I've kind of used it as a backup off and on, but it's finally time to do a review. But again, remember, it is the Generation 1. I have not used the Generation 2 and hence I don't know about it. But anyway, let's look around the table. So what do I think about the Uturn Orbit and specifically the Gen 1? Well, I've had this turntable a couple of times. Actually, this is my third time. I actually got this from a gentleman locally. I did a repair for him and he didn't, not that he didn't have the money to pay me, but he said, hey, I have a little bit of cash I can give you. I can give you all the cash, but how about we do this? How about I give you this? It's basically new. He said he bought it. He only used it a couple of times, which is true. And I'll just pay you a little bit in cash and you can take the table. And I said, well, yeah, that sounds good. And so I used it and, and anyway, I got it from that. And overall, things like build quality, it's pretty good. I do think the build quality feels, compared to Project, the build quality on this feels a little bit more. And of course, this is the Gen 1. It's obviously got the built-in, tone arm lift, excuse me. It also has the built-in phono preamp as well. And so originally this thing I think was around $350, give or take. Phone keeps going off. But yeah, around $350, give or take, a few bucks there. But yeah, build quality is pretty good. It's a little bit better, I think, than what you get with like Project, for example. And just a little bit nicer, feels a little bit more substantial. The only issue I've ever had with the Projects is, of course, the sub platter. Since it's so narrow, you can get the platter to wobble quite easily. Something that doesn't happen on Projects because their sub platter is about twice as large as this one is. But that's really my only criticism. But of course, in practice and usage, it's really not that big a deal. But with a larger sub platter, it does make the top platter feel more substantial and more put together, and the build quality and presentation and feels more better. You know what I mean? Now, when it comes, of course, to sound quality, it's kind of a mixed bag. I like it, but I do think even something like the Project T1, which I haven't heard, but I've heard the Primary, which is its immediate success or predecessor, even with something lowly like the Primary, or I've had the Elemental a couple times, if anybody remembers the Elemental. Even those, I feel like they irk just a hair bit more detail off the records than something like than the Orbit does. And of course, Rega is just way up there. If you get the P1, it just gets more detail off your records. You feel like more of the info on your records is actually going into your amp and into the speakers versus what this does. It just, everything kind of comes across slightly muted. Now this does have the budget cartridge on it, the AT91, but I really don't think it's a cartridge issue here because I've heard the AT91, I've had it on turntables here and had it sound better than it does on this table. All right, not that, and again, I don't mean it to be a criticism, forgive me, but I think for whatever reason, this table just doesn't get quite as much info off the records as what some of its competitors do. But, saying that, sound quality is pretty good. It is a very analog sound, and I know that sounds like a contradiction, like, oh, of course it's a turntable, of course it's an analog sound. But some turntables, get yourself a Technics, and you'll figure out exactly what I'm saying. Kind of can come across as almost having a very clean sound, almost like you're listening to a CD, when in fact it's a record. This, on the other hand, every record you put on, it sounds like a record. It sounds like you're listening to vinyl records. And so, yeah, it definitely has a good quality sound. A little bit woolly, little not as open and as detailed as I've mentioned. A little bit more restrained in that respect. Great mid-range balance. Great tonal definition there in the mid-range. Bass isn't quite as substantial as I've heard. I think with something like Projects, for whatever reason, they get a little bit more bass out off of a record than this thing seems to be able to. Regas kind of don't, because just sort of their design, and when you step up, you get a lot of bass, but their bass isn't in terms of quantity, it's more in quality, if you understand what I mean. But in this respect with the U-Turn, it is, it's satisfactory, let's put it that way. So I've had a few U-Turns, as I mentioned. Obviously, this is the third one. I got one a long time ago, maybe about 5 years ago, back when I used to have my old channel. And I got it to review. I got the Orbit Basic, the $200 turntable. And I said to myself, well, man, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to get it. I'm going to review it and see what it is. Well, when I got it, it had a problem with it. The motor would like freeze up for whatever reason. And I called U-Turn, and they're like, well, it might just be a production issue. We'll send you another one. Well, in terms of, at that time of me doing reviews, I was like, screw it. Forget about it. I'll just return the table. And I just told them I'd just return it. And then I ended up getting another one a couple of years ago off of Amazon. And it was the U-Turn Plus, Orbit Plus, the one with the acrylic platter. And I thought, well, okay, I'll get this, and I'll finally do a review on it. Right? Because I've been, over 5-6 years, I've been trying to do a review of this turntable. And anyway, I got the Plus and got it in, and it was fine, with the exception of it ran slow, and I mean ridiculously slow. Instead of 33.3, it ran at like 32.1. Slow enough to notice. Okay, slow enough to notice. It ran slow on 33, it ran slow on 45. And so I'm not going to judge a turntable how it's supposed to sound with a slow motor and a slow speed. That's just ridiculous. So I returned it. And of course Amazon, you just return it. It's pretty easy that way. But this one actually runs perfect. I guess third time's the charm. But yeah, this one runs perfect. Speed is great in both 33 and 45. But yeah, overall, it's a good turntable. Final thoughts type of thing. It's a good turntable. I do think for just a hair bit more money, 50, 60 bucks, going with something like the T1 from Project, or you can still get the primary here and there. I think for just that little bit extra outlay, you get a better sounding turntable. So it begs the question, why buy this? You know what I mean?